Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast, presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Kevin Ingram. Kevin appears on the guest line. That's presented by Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group. Michael is a local carpenter and a lifelong Vandy fan. He builds bookshelves, cabinets, picture frames, furniture, and made-to-order items like a display case for my prized Dale Murphy jersey. I've seen Michael's work. He's a true craftsman. If you're in the market for custom woodwork, give Michael a call. That number 615-830-9458. You can also text him at that number as well. The podcast also presented by our friends at Sutherland & Belk. That's a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That number, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and how they can help. We recorded this podcast on Wednesday. We're airing it on Friday. Anyway, Kevin and I talk about Vanderbilt basketball and football, so we hope you enjoy today's episode with Kevin Ingram. Kevin Ingram joins us. He is one of the play-by-play voices for Vanderbilt Athletics. Busy week. We got football and basketball going at the same time, and this is one of these weeks you got to keep your calendar straight for sure. I know I do, at least.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Chris. It's a crazy time right now. I'm just trying to figure out what game's next and get all the prep done. It's not doing the games, it's doing the prep for the games that can be challenging sometimes. But, yeah, we'll figure it all out. Got doing men's basketball on Friday, then football on Saturday. I'm actually working at the Titans game on Sunday. Going to Philadelphia on Monday. Vanderbilt plays Temple on Tuesday. I think I'm doing the women's game on Thursday of next week. Commodores play Austin Peay. I believe there's another game on Friday. Vanderbilt plays Morehead State. Football against Florida on Saturday, and then we're going to California after that for the Thanksgiving tournament. Yes, I think that's how the schedule goes.
You mean you're not going to try to squeeze in a baseball scrimmage and all that?
If there was a way I could do it, I certainly would. I know baseball's playing the David Williams Fall Classic on Sunday, and that's going to be cool. Used to be, of course, called the Black and Gold Fall Series, but yeah, they'll finish up fall training on Sunday.
Let's talk hoops. We're doing this on Wednesday afternoon. There was a basketball game on Monday night against Memphis. What were your thoughts on what you saw?
Chris, I thought the poor start really hurt. Vanderbilt just couldn't hit anything early in the game, and especially from three-point land. And Memphis' defense had something to do with that. But second half, it felt like they settled in and played a little better and made some shots. And in the end, the three-point shooting looked respectable. But it was a really slow start from behind the arc. I really was impressed with some of the young players we saw, and there was no question that Stack was putting those guys out there to play quite a bit and see what they had. And you saw a stretch there in the second half where it was a lineup that was pretty heavy with freshmen. I think probably 3 freshmen and maybe 2 older players, and at least one of them was a transfer. So it was a lineup of new guys and learning those combinations. But Memphis' defense, to their credit, was really good. They switched everything. They had some really nice players. That looks like they're going to have a pretty good season. But it felt like at times they were just controlled the game by playing good defense and not letting Vanderbilt get things going in transition. And every time Vanderbilt would show signs of life and trim it down to maybe 9 or 10 points, Memphis always seemed to have an answer. They stretch it back to 14 or 15, and they were able to get out with a win.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I don't know how many other people laughed at the press conference when I did, but he made the comment Jerry Stackhouse did about Memphis being so old that he played with some of those guys. I mean, and that was certainly a factor. Vanderbilt was playing a lot of freshmen, and look, Vanderbilt's got plenty of experience too, but Memphis did have some older kids out there too, and that's probably. And I think he hinted at this later. Maybe not. It may not be the game you want to open with, but it's the time they wanted to schedule it. I think they've been trying to do that for a while, and maybe you'd like to have Southern Miss, which is Friday instead of Memphis first, but that's how it fell.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It seemed fun going into it. There's a lot of excitement.
Hey, Kevin, I lost you.
Can get out there and work out some of the kinks. Playing Memphis in that game, that's a hard way to start off. On the flip side of that, you find out what you have right away playing against some dudes that have been around a while. I think DeAndre Williams is the oldest player in college basketball. I believe he's 26 years old, if I remember correctly. So they have some guys that are very experienced. And I was hearing Penny with their radio crew after the game, and he was saying they hadn't had a chance to practice together a whole lot, that they'd had some injuries that had kept them from really having a full squad available to get practice time in, and that they were learning on the fly a little bit too. But I thought they looked like a good team, and maybe we'll see this Vanderbilt group progress as we go through the non-conference. But that's a tough one to open up against, no question.
Yeah, I thought the most glaring thing in a bad way was that I just think they're really going to miss Scottie Pippen Jr. I mean, look, just about any team would, but I don't think the looks are the same with him not there running the floor. You just had so much to worry about with him, and that's going to take some time to get used to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 20 points a game is hard to replace, and not just the 20 points, but the attention, as you referenced, that he attracts and potentially opens things up for other players. And the thing I think you missed too with Scottie is when things maybe are a little stagnant with your offense and shots aren't going in or it's just not running smoothly, he had the ability to create offense, to manufacture points, to draw some contact, get fouled, get to the free throw line or hit a three or score on a drive. He just had the ability to score, and especially just down and dirty ways of getting points, whether it's, like you say, drawing a foul and getting to the striper or whatever it had to be. He was always able to figure out a way to get it done.
We started our prep on Southern Miss yet? I know it's a team I think that came off a tough season a year ago.
Yeah, they did, and boy, you look at their roster, and you talk about some roster turnover. I only counted maybe 4 or 5 guys that played, any significant minutes for them last season. The rest of it is a group stocked with transfers. I mean, and you can say that about a lot of teams around the country. The transfer portal was such a big part of college basketball and college athletics, for that matter. But yeah, this is a Southern Miss team that's all brand new. They played on Monday. They played maybe a Division II or Division III team, and were able to win pretty handily there. I don't think they shot it especially well in that game, but they forced a bunch of turnovers. But I don't know that they got a huge test from that game. They played pretty much everybody they had. But yeah, it looks like a very new team for that program that had a rough season last year.
Of the freshmen, and I know this is way premature. We didn't get to see much of them. Maybe you've been to some practice and some things I've not. Who do you think ends up being the one who contributes the most this year?
That's a great question. I would say Colin Smith and Malik Dia, and those were 2 of the first ones you saw enter the game. I feel like those guys have a real chance to be big contributors. Colin looks like just a fantastic athlete, and he made a few plays in that game the other night. And Malik Dia, both of them looked a little jittery when they first got in there, especially those first shot attempts. But as they settled in, they looked a little more comfortable and a little more smooth. But I know they're really excited about those guys. Malik played at Ensworth. He's from Murfreesboro, and Colin Smith, a guy from Texas. But yeah, this looks like a pretty talented freshman group. We saw Lee Dort for a little bit the other night. He got in there and got a block, guy with a big body. And we saw Paul Lewis as backup point guard. Did not see Noah Shelby, but I know they're pretty excited about his ability to shoot the basketball. So, yeah, we saw quite a few of those young guys. But if you really ask me to pin a couple, I think Colin Smith and Malik might be the 2.
Yeah, I would say you're right on that. Lee Dort, too, didn't get in until later, but had a pretty nice block he threw into the stands. I just think they're at the point there where they got 2 guys in front of him, and I wonder what that's going to look like.
Yeah, for sure. They have good size with Quentin Lower-Brown and Liam Robbins, 2 experienced big guys. It's supposed to be the year of the big man in college basketball. Vanderbilt would seem to have that part of it covered. Should be able to get good production out of those dudes throughout the season. And And Malik Diaz is a big body too. But yeah, I think Lee Dorton, seeing his progress, it's really going to be interesting to see how he grows throughout the course of this season. But he and Noah Shelby basically grew up together, or at least have for the last few years down in Texas. And I know they're excited to be here together. But yeah, it was fun to see Lee make his first appearance. And as you said, it had a huge swat that ended up over in the stands going into a timeout.
I know it wasn't unexpected. It's what I expected based on what little I'd heard out of scrimmages and practices. But they've got Quentin Malora-Brown starting ahead of Liam Robbins. Liam, of course, has put up some really nice numbers, scoring and rebounding, and particularly in block shots. And I know that Malora-Brown gives him a lot of intangibles and things that Jerry likes. But are you a little surprised that they've made that choice as a starter, given that this team probably is going to need some more offense now that Pippen's gone?
I don't know that I was really that surprised. We saw Liam Robbins start and Q come off the bench toward the end of last year. But to begin this season, they started with Malora-Brown. It's probably really more about defense and some of those intangible things. And he's a guy who typically takes charges. I think that was the part that Jerry Stackhouse wasn't very happy with after the game. When we spoke to him the other night, that we need to see guys getting on the floor and getting those foul calls. But they're a good tandem. I'll be interested to see how much they play them together, because I think there's some interesting things you can do when you have two big guys, especially two that can pass. Q is more of a guy that's going to score at close range, although if you told me the first shot of the season for Vanderbilt would be a Malora-Brown three-pointer, I don't know that I would have been able to predict that. Liam's certainly more of a threat from the outside, but I think both of them are going to get plenty of playing time regardless of who's starting and who's coming off the bench.
Yeah, I was with you. That was not the first shot I thought would go up. But let's talk football for a minute. Disappointing outcome against South Carolina. Once again, Vanderbilt's in the fourth quarter with a chance to win if things go well. They did not. What did you take away from that game, maybe as a positive?
I think the one positive from that game was Ray Davis. Number 2 was pretty awesome carrying the football. 20 carries for 167. He had a receiving touchdown. I thought he ran as well as he has throughout the whole season. And I think he was recharged and rested after that second open week. I thought he was good. The emergence of Quincy Skinner scoring his first 2 touchdowns, one on a long play and one on a play that was a short pass, and he was really patient. He made a guy miss and got into the end zone. That was pretty nice. Mike Wright's going to start at quarterback this week, which in relief of A.J. Swan, who was injured again against South Carolina. But, yeah, if you ask me a positive, I thought the play of Ray Davis and the TDs by Quincy Skinner were things you can take away from that one.
I'm really interested to see who sees the field more and maybe new guys. I think someone had said Cole Spence was out there on tight end the other night. I don't remember seeing it. I know he played some special teams. They had a walk-on Nick Rinaldi playing a decent number of reps in the second half the other night, which I found interesting at end, where they're just really short on bodies at this point. Any guess on maybe who we see a little bit more of at this point?
Really kind of hard to say as far as young guys, because at this point you're at the point in the season where if you have guys who haven't played at all, you can throw them out there for these final games. You got that 4-game window. You can use players. One thing I would like to see, and I think everybody around this program would like to see, is that Davion Davis can get back on the field at some point before the season is done. I know they'd love to see him have a chance to return finally from the knee injury that's kept him out for almost a full calendar year. He's been rehabbing that injury from the Kentucky game last season. I know he's been able to at least put on the shoulder pads and get in some work this week, but I don't know how far away he is from actually playing in a game. But you root for a guy like that who's been a cap for this team and a good leader and one of those vocal guys that they can really use, especially up front on defense. So I love to see if Davion could get in and at some point in one of these final 3 games and give him a few snaps, and I think everybody would feel good about that.
Yeah, I was at practice on Tuesday for just a few minutes while we're waiting on the coaches, and I know they don't want us really – that's kind of an off-limits thing to talk about what goes on there. Not that we really see much anyway. But I will say this, there was kind of a I don't know, the body language and a sense of urgency with him and the way that he was going about his reps made it feel to me like we'll see him by season's end.
Yeah, I hope so. And I talked to him a little bit yesterday after practice, and you could tell he was really itching to get back out there and play in a game. But he said he'd also gained some perspective from being on the sideline and trying to lead in that way and help some guys on that defense come along. But you think about all the things that go into rehabbing an injury, especially an injury that was pretty serious. There's the surgery part of it, and then there's the recovery, and then there's just that long road back where you probably feel like you're isolated at times. You're over there riding the bike or doing exercises or whatever you're doing while your teammates are out there practicing, getting ready to play a game. And he said it was hard to watch and see everybody out there in games and not be able to join his teammates and kind of watching the season go by. But it'd be cool if we could see number 9 back on the field at some point.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing. It's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible. I'm looking at the depth chart for the game against Kentucky. I'd not noticed, I don't know if he was on there last week. They're now listing Leighton Nelson is their backup left tackle. I guess the move of Gunnar Hansen to guard inside is permanent-ish, perhaps. I don't know. Gage Pitchford is listed as the starter at right guard, backed up by Jake Ketchik. That's, I think, a new one. And Jacob Brammer with David Siegel backing up at right tackle. That's interesting because that's a lot of new faces, and I feel like they've played a lot of pieces on the offensive line and gotten more out of these kids than I thought they would. I mean, I thought the run blocking against South Carolina was pretty good, to be honest with you. It's very interesting to see how some of these pieces on the offensive line are getting moved around and how you're starting to see younger guys pop up on the depth chart too.
Yeah, no doubt. They've had lots of injuries on the offensive line, and some guys who've been starters have had to spend some time on the sideline. So yeah, it feels like it's been a patchwork line at times. But I was talking to Mike right after the game the other day. He said he was really proud of those dudes that got in there and did a good job. And as you said, they did a good job run blocking, but you got to give your quarterback some time in the pass game because you can't just be totally one-dimensional. But it feels like for whatever they've had to do in terms of subbing out guys for injury and plugging in some young players on that offensive line, that they're getting some good experience. And A.J. Blazik, I always feel like he's a fun guy to watch in practice when you see him out there working those old linemen. But yeah, it's a chance to get some experience in this final stretch of the season for some of those guys.
I'd be remiss if we're talking offensive line if we don't get into Bradley Ashmore. I got a lot of respect for what that kid did. He's having surgery. I don't know that we ever asked. I mean, Clark didn't volunteer, and so I didn't press him on what the issue was. But Bradley Ashmore is having surgery. I think sometime within the coming days. It's going to end his season. He played 79 snaps, which is every single one of them against South Carolina.
Yeah, that was pretty remarkable, wasn't it? I don't know that he was expected to play, at least according to some of the conversations leading into that game. But there he was. He was out there. He was playing, and total props. I mean, you talk about some tough old dudes, man. That you can put his name on the list. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's not been a good time, and I'm not a big fan of moral victories, although we knew it was going to be important for this team to progress. I don't think people were happy about the outcome, and they shouldn't be. But I think this is the time of year where you start to wonder if kids have quit. And between just the language, the body language I saw on Tuesday and stuff like that, it makes me think, I don't know that they're going to win another game. I think that's going to be an uphill climb. But at least it appears to me it's a team that's not packed it in at this point.
No, I don't think so, Chris. I feel like the energy and passion in practice is about the same as it's looked all season. I was out there today for a little bit. I was out there yesterday for a while, and I know guys are still hustling and doing all those things. And I know I've heard talk around about consistency and just keeping that energy up throughout these practices. And these guys, you get to that point of the season where you practice a lot, and you're probably tired of that part of it. And it's been a tough stretch of games, but you got to give them props for the energy level and level of compete being still good. And I've asked Clark Lee about that a couple of times. He said, well, that's the expectation for this program. There aren't like a lot of kudos for getting out there and playing hard, and that's what you're supposed to do. And I get that, but also in what's been a tough season, credit to these guys for still getting out there and putting in the work and being enthusiastic about it.
Kevin, I'm going to let you go here in a second. Any parting thoughts on topics we didn't cover today, and anything that you guys would like to publicize from the school in terms of your upcoming coverage?
Yeah, for sure. Friday night we'll have basketball, 5:30 pregame, 6 o'clock tip-off for Vanderbilt and Southern Miss. On a women's game on Thursday night, they'll play Sanford at home, and coverage on the Vanderbilt Sports Network and on SEC Network Plus. And then Saturday for football, pregame 9:30 a.m. Central Time. It's going to be a quick turnaround for me to get to Lexington and do it all, but we'll be on the air at 9:30, kickoff at 11. And also all the best to Vanderbilt's soccer team. They will play in the NCAA tournament on Friday at Clemson, 2 o'clock Central. They got an at-large bid. Darren Ambrose has done a great job with that program. They've been to the tournament 5 out of 6 years, and they got an at-large bid after a tough finish in the SEC tournament, but a really nice showing down in Pensacola a couple weeks ago.
Stock up on the caffeine, my friend.
I will do it. That's what I do.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Anytime, Chris. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.